Hello and welcome to the podcast Being Human Hidden Depths by Collaboration Global. My name is Jill Tiny and our community has a clubhouse session once a week and the conversations are awesome and we didn't want anyone to miss out, so we've popped them into this podcast so you too can enjoy them. Obviously all around a theme on collaboration, but different topics ranging from how to collaborate in your business to do you have a sixth sense and how to use it. Please enjoy this next hour where our community and our guests come together to have a great conversation.
Welcome to Collaboration Global Club on Clubhouse. And this week we are looking at the weird and the wonderful. Men are better at collaboration than women, aren't they? This stems from, like most discussions on Clubhouse, stems from my experiences during the week. I put a little post on, I think it was Tuesday, and a little poll on LinkedIn, just to kind of, let's just mix it up a bit and see what happens. And I thought everyone would say, oh, that's ridiculous. It doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman if you collaborate. But it was really interesting. There were some people that were definitely, of course, men are better. And some of them were like, oh, my goodness, women are miles better. And some of them were like, it doesn't matter. So I just thought we'd extend that conversation because it actually has many levels. There are different ways of viewing it. There are different ways of seeing why we should label ourselves masculine, feminine, what attributes we have, how that plays out into our lives, and how our opinions can prevent us from seeing things that we could possibly do. So if women believe that men were better at collaboration, that automatically puts them into a subservient role. So this could be very interesting. So I'm joined today by Gina as one of our moderators and Lizzie as well. We have some of our members from Collaboration Global in the audience. Lovely to see Gunjan, Tim and Steve. For those of you that are regulars, just to let you know that Francis is busy saving someone from a cyber attack. He's been working through the night and he sends his apologies that he can't join us this morning. But hopefully he has sorted out, I think he's got 18 machines or something to go through, and it takes a while. But sadly, they weren't protected beforehand. So Francis West, who is normally with us, we send him our love and hope it's going well. In the meantime, Gina has stepped into the breach and has offered to help, which is a beautiful thing. We were discussing how to ask for help yesterday, and that might be a good conversation for next week, Gina. So I'm going to hand over to you, my love. Do you believe that men are better at collaboration than women?
I think it's a really interesting question, so multi-layered. First of all, I think we need to define what we mean by collaboration. And I think if we're talking about business collaboration, I think one of the things is that there are probably more men in business. Certainly more men, in my experience, go to networking meetings. And so I wonder if that's why there is an impression that men are better at collaboration, because perhaps there are more men who are in collaborative situations. But in my experience, it hasn't made any difference gender-wise. It's very much specifically around the person, and it's around shared values. And if you've got shared values and a shared purpose, then the collaboration tends to go well. And if you haven't, then the collaboration falls apart. But in my experience, actually, it's more about the individual than it is about the gender. But I can see how the illusion that men are better comes across, because in reality, many people's perception is that they see more men collaborating in business. Doesn't necessarily mean they do it well, they just see more of it. But I'm perfectly prepared for somebody to convince me otherwise. But I think, like all of these things, it's very situational and very much dependent upon the person in specifically. But I also think, as I say, it's multi-dimensional, that there are certain aspects of collaboration where perhaps men or women are better practiced. And that's when it comes down to the core values of collaboration. We think of women being more nurturing, but in my experience, there are plenty of men who are incredibly nurturing. But it comes down for me to integrity, compassion, the courage to be authentic and to speak your truth in a way that is possible for other people to receive. And I think men and women are equally capable of that.
Yeah, that's a good start. That's a very rounded viewpoint, I think. And unless you've been in a few collaborations, you probably can't tell. And from the outside looking in, the masculine traits would appear to be the best ones for collaboration. You know, more direct, more able to take charge, maybe more problem solving, possibly. But as you say, there are women that can do that, and there are men that can do that. And there's nothing that, I mean, the world that we live in now, that we know that apart from having a baby, there's nothing that either sex can't do in the same stance. You know, fighting in wars, doing major keep fit sessions, all the sort of physical stuff that we used to delineate ourselves with. Isn't a part of a collaboration. You don't need any difference in physicality. You just need a difference in attitude. And as you say, I think a definition of what collaboration is, I think probably cooperation around teams is a different aspect and a different skill set than actually collaboration. So, 100% agree with what you're saying, Gina. This is a good start. Thank you so much. I'm just going to welcome the guys that have just joined us as well, Marcus and Tim. Thank you for being here again, Tim. Lovely to have you here. If you guys want to ask a question, don't forget, just hit the button at the bottom with a little hand and let us know that you want to get up on stage. Same with you, Caroline, if you want to come up on stage and pitch into this conversation, which I know you have lots of thoughts on. I really hope you do come up on stage. We'll invite you up. It will be great to have you here. So thank you, Gina, for that. I'm going to ask you to reset the room at around about 8:20. And Lizzie, thank you for coming this morning. Now, you have probably a unique viewpoint from here, because there ain't nothing you can't do, girlie, is there?
Oh, well, I'm working on it. Yeah, it's really interesting. It wasn't until I read your post that it even occurred to me there was a difference between men and women, which is really interesting, which is, I suppose, partly obviously having been in the army where it was dominated by men. And I totally believe everything that, obviously, as always, with Gina said, just the goal that Gina says. But I think to me, there's a big difference between collaboration and working together. Because you can be working together on a common goal, which is not necessarily collaboration. So I see collaboration creates much more vulnerability, wanting to give your best, having that common purpose, and just sort of all cards on the table of how can we collectively make this work better. And I do think there's a subtle difference. And as far as men and women, I think it's much more to do with a person, much more to do with your leadership style, and much more to do with, you know, how you want to contribute to the world, in a way. So that's my thoughts.
That's really interesting, Lizzie, because when we first started up Collaboration Global, we used to have the face-to-face meetings, you know, many, forever ago. I remember we had a fabulous meeting. It was really lively, really exciting. And this lady sided up to me at the end of it, and she went, where are all the women here? And I'm like, what do you mean? She went, well, there's no women. And I looked around, and there was only one other woman. So there was 3 of us, and I think about, 25 guys. Again, I hadn't even seen that. It hadn't crossed my mind. And that she had spotted it. I'm like, oh, yeah. Why are there not more women? Why are they not attracted to this space of collaboration? When you consider to be able to collaborate effectively, exactly as you said, things like vulnerability come into play. We have to push ourselves out of our comfort zone. We have to stand up and go, shall we try this? We have to fall over flat on our faces and go, oops, that didn't work. Because a true collaboration is about creating something that nobody's experienced before. So I totally empathise with what you're saying there, because I don't see male or female or, you know, colours or disabilities or, you know, status, whether you're rich or poor, it actually has no effect on us. And in fact, that is one of our values at Collaboration Global, is human being first. Doesn't matter all the other labels that we happen to put on ourselves. If you're a human being first, then we love you. And because we love you, we trust you. And because we trust you, we respect you. And if we respect you, hey, let's do a collaboration. There must be something we can work on together to make an impact, a positive impact in our world. So I love the fact that you hadn't even thought about that. You hadn't seen that when you were at work.
Yeah.
You didn't take the difference into account.
And one thing, I think we have to add a part of this is that collaboration is so much about innovation. And you can't have innovation without courage and vulnerability. So, doing a task together, I think that's probably what I mean by having a team on a project. You can all be doing your task, getting on with your...
Oh, we seem to have lost Lizzie there.
Because you're not necessarily having to be vulnerable and having that courage to just think out differently.
We did just lose you for a little minute. There, Lizzie. Could you just say that last bit again for me, darling? Sorry.
Yeah, I think talking about the difference between teamwork and collaboration is that for me, collaboration you cannot have innovation. For collaboration, you need to have innovation, and for innovation, you need to have courage and vulnerability, and that is the difference between, to my mind, teamwork, where you'll just have the common goal of the tasks in hand, but you don't necessarily have to be vulnerable or have courage. Whereas with collaboration, you do have to have that courage, which creates vulnerability, which is why people are just not necessarily intentionally, they're just not natural collaborators.
Interesting. I think, is it a natural collaborator? It's the nature-nurture debate again, isn't it? Is it that they're not natural collaborators, or it's been kind of drummed out of them? Because the society we're in, we're taught that it's okay for women to feel vulnerable, and it's all right for men to have courage, but you don't necessarily put them in the same space. Fascinating. I'm going to leave that there, see where we swing around to, and come back to that maybe later on. And it's lovely to see Selena here. So we've got basically three wonderful coaches, Gina, Lizzie and Selena. Ooh, girls team today. Where have all the boys gone? What now, Selena, we cut you short last week and you were on a roll with some great stuff to say, but we were running out of time, so it's really nice to have you to be able to say something at the beginning of the session. Where do you stand on this? As a leadership coach and helping people to step into their power, is there a difference?
I think it's very much about traits and people, and there's a kind of quite a bit that's been said already as well, but it's how I think we view it, one as well. So like you were saying about how we look at male traits or men and how we look at women, and like Lizzie said about kind of teamwork and collaboration being a different kind of concept. I think the idea of collaboration as well is truly about each party bringing all of themselves to what's happening, to create something new, to work on something without agenda. And I've come across men and women that are unable to do that. I think to collaborate, it also takes a certain amount of settledness as well, and kind of settledness in yourself. And I think where you're not sort of watching each other or think kind of upmanship in there as well. And I think it's about trade more than anything. And like you said as well, Jill, I think how we've perceived kind of masculine, feminine, or men and women kind of previously, that's probably dictated quite a lot, but I think it's more around the traits of the person rather than specific gender.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. I mean, we talk in our community about behaviours and mindset, and the behaviours. I'm just going to mute you, darling, because. Okay. So the behaviours of collaboration, as far as we're concerned, that we have worked out and kind of identified, are along the lines of obviously having integrity, having courage, being able to be vulnerable, all of the things that have been mentioned here today. And I think, as you say, it's the traits of the people. And it doesn't mean to say you cannot acquire those traits. You might not have them initially. Maybe as a woman, you come in and you've maybe run a business and you're used to being listened to. So you kind of overspeak other people and are demanding attention. And that actually in a collaboration isn't going to work. So you have to learn that, I have to learn to listen. I have to listen without intent to respond. I have to listen with an intent to understand and move the conversation into a solution-focused space. But when people are pulling their gender card out of the bag, it's like, oh, poor me, I'm a female, I can't do this. Or a man going, well, come on, we've got to get going. Men have got to be in action. It's, excuse my French, just a load of rubbish. I was going to say something else, but I calmed down. It's, we all have the ability to adapt and change. We can modify our behaviour. We can adapt. We can learn from others. And you understand after a while, when you're in a collaboration where there is trust and there is a deep respect and ultimately there is love in the room for the project alone as well as each other, then you start to relax so that you can take on board other traits that you might not have had. So when you feel in a safe space, you're allowed to be vulnerable and say, look, I want to try this. I don't know if I can do it, but will you help me? Or maybe you've been creative and you've pulled something out of the bag and it hasn't quite worked. And it's failure. Nobody wants to admit to failure. Nobody wants to say, oh no, I did it wrong. But failure is a learning space. It's fantastic because you know how not to do it now and you can move on to the next level. So there are so many things. But I think historically we have to take some value from all the learning that men have had because they have been doing it, they've kind of been in charge for a long time now. And whilst they've missed some of the softer, so-called softer skills of feminine qualities, I think there are some great things that men do that we could all learn from. And there are men that are maybe introverted and don't normally step up to the plate, and they could learn from the more robust, direct people, as men could learn from women when they aren't great at listening, and quite often women are the ones that are used to listening because, as the chief carers of the next generation, not necessarily now, but maybe 20 years ago we had to listen to our children. We had to listen and understand what they were going through, empathise, encourage, support, help, all the things that are needed in a collaboration. So men have to kind of take that on board as well. So I'll come back to Gina and you can just answer the question and then reset the room for me, my love, or vice versa. Actually, reset the room first and then think about this question. Is what traits do you think, that's a good word, Selena, thank you, traits. What traits do you think we can take from the men that have been collaborating over history that we could all be learning from, men and women together?
So thank you for that question. Blimey, I'll think about that. To reset the room, thank you very much for joining us. Today we're having a discussion about, are men better at collaboration? And we've already had some really interesting thoughts. It would be great if you could invite people. If you look at the little plus button at the bottom right-hand corner, that will show your followers. And if you could invite them to come and join us, that would be really, really great. So we're talking between now and 9 o'clock about, are men better at collaboration? Are there traits? Well, I think it's really interesting to try and separate out the traits that people consider. Can you just say the question again, Jill? Because I haven't reset the room. I've lost track of the question.
Historically, men have been the ones that have been collaborating. And I was just wondering whether you think there are things that we could learn from them, that we should, whether it's man or woman now, what are the traits that they might have had back then that we can go, okay, we don't want to dismiss what they've done in the past. So for a great collaboration, what maybe masculine traits do you think we could be looking at?
The thing I'm struggling with a lot of things in terms of this, in that men historically collaborated in formal business. But, women were behind the scenes working together and collaborating in terms of the domestic business that went on since time started. But I'll go with the question that you've asked. I think an openness to collaboration and feeling that they deserve it and that they can actually contribute. Because I think one of the things for women is their recognition that they have something to contribute, I think is quite important. I also think that in many ways, and I think it's just a perception, because when I've worked with men, the perception isn't actually always the reality, is that they have the courage to step out and to try new things, and to be courageous. But I do believe that that's perhaps a perception. And I think because there is such a long history of men getting together to collaborate in business in order to succeed, I think there's an expectation that that's what you do. And because of that, it's seen as part of the norm rather than something unusual. Whether they were good at it, I think that's a completely different question. But I think there was an expectation that people would get together in order to innovate. I think Liz's point really important, and to move things on. And again, it comes down to they had a clear purpose about what they wanted to achieve, success in whatever form they were talking about. And so there was a readiness to get together and to collaborate. But I do wonder how much of that was a perception when you think about women in the dairy or women getting together to do things within the community. I just think that so often it went below the radar. And so what we're talking about very much is perception rather than reality. But the traits are the ability to listen, courage, and step out of your comfort zone. The capacity to see beyond the now. You talked about problem solving. I think that's one of the traits that men think it's their job to solve the problem, and the fact that they're ready to take action. So those are the traits I think that help collaboration, or certainly help collaboration in the format that it was previously, because I do think there's been some quite significant shifts in terms of what collaboration means today.
Brilliant, Gina. Yeah, it's so true that as you say, significant changes. And I think the way we're moving forward, I just believe that gender is kind of irrelevant in today's society, but we still have the vestiges of what's left over. So when I did this post on LinkedIn, please check it. I think it was Tuesday or Wednesday. If anybody wants to go and find it, there's a poll. And some of the comments were really quite antiquated, shall we say? Like, of course, men are better at collaboration than women because blah, blah, blah. And it was along the lines of they have to be in charge of the family, they have to this, they have to that. And obviously there are parts of the world where this is still the case. People look up to the patriarch of the family. They look up to the leader of the company, who is 90% of leaders in that environment, in that culture, are men. And so whilst we in the Western world, in the UK at the moment, and a lot of Western countries can see there is this change. We've got a lot of female leaders now. There is still this residual underlying emotion and feeling, which played out on the LinkedIn post. When you look at some of the comments, that people still believe that, well, I know men and women are equal, but I think men actually, they've got better traits, and they can do this and they can do that. So it's interesting how it's a bit like people going, I'm not racist, but
yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but just by saying that, you're proving that you are, what you're crazy.
But it comes down to beliefs, doesn't it, Jill? And our beliefs create our reality. Interesting that people think that men run the family. I was listening to something last night. It wasn't a documentary, and the woman said, "Yeah, it's like this. He thinks he runs the family, and he makes all the big decisions like who we're going to vote for. But in reality, I run the family. I just don't make a song and dance about it. And, I think beliefs and perceptions are everything. And we continually recreate those beliefs and perceptions until something makes us think differently. And, ultimately, as we move forward, I think what's going to be important is that we collaborate as a race. It can't be men and women. If we're going to survive and the planet's going to survive, we all have to take responsibility for our choices day by day. And collaboration has to be a global thing and not a gender thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. If anyone's done any research around this, one of the things that you might like to dip into is spiral dynamics. And that is by a theory by Claire Graves, Graves, and his fantastic sidekick, Don Beck. Well, Claire Graves is no longer with us. This was back in the 60s. But spiral dynamics looked at the consciousness of societies historically, so over the millennia, also geographically and also individually, and how it's interesting to see that there are still some, despite the fact that we're all connected by this wonderful thing, the interwebby, whatnot, there are still parts of the world that are not connected in that way, and there are still parts of the world that will be having the same belief systems and perceptions that probably we would have had maybe 100 years ago or more. And historically, men have always been the leaders, whether it be of the army or whether it be of the family or everything in between. So it is interesting how these beliefs and perceptions we think have changed. And in the Western world, to a certain extent they have, but there's this residual underlying current. Do you know what? I'm so pleased that we've got two boys up on the stage. Otherwise, it could have been a very feminine conversation, and I'm hoping you might have a different slant on it. David, I know, dashes backwards and forwards taking his kids to school. So I don't know if you're free.
I can chip in.
You're ready to chip in? Go for it.
I can chip in. I read this question as basically are men I was ready to chip in. I read this question as are men or women better equipped to collaborate? Oh, right. Can I come back to you in 5 minutes? Let me just dump this because it's just going to shout. I'll come back to you in a minute.
No worries. Hold that thought. We'll come back to you. Meanwhile, I love it. Tim, thank you for coming up on stage. What would you like to say? As the lone male at the moment, the lone male voice in this conversation, it'd be great to hear what you think.
It's been an interesting conversation and interesting hearing. Sort of, as I look into this, I think for me, the sexes bring different traits and capabilities to the table. I'm a great follower of Barbara and Alan Peach, who did a lot around behavioural studies and the body language piece. One of the best books I've ever read, the definitive book of body language by Barbara and Alan Peach. And they've gone on to try study really the difference between the two sexes and the capabilities, and they take it back far anthropologically to very early days where men would go out and hunt and the ladies would stay home and keep the home fires burning. And I am, under no illusion that the women are the superior sex from body language, reading, perspective, emotional, EQ and IQ and the superior sex because you are able to support and bring forth our progeny. So no illusion there. This isn't a question of sexes, but I think we collaborate. Can we add that to the English language? I think we collaborate in two different ways. I think men are primevally preconditioned to collaborate as they do on the hunt, with an understanding of the common goals, stated goals up front, and then collaborate. Women have just got this fantastic innate ability to communicate more openly. They are far better able to read the signs and read a room just phenomenally. And some of the best salespeople I've met, by far and away, some of the best salespeople I've met are females, because they walk into a room, I walk out, having read the room based on the words that were provided, and the woman goes, "Yeah, you're not going to get a purchase order off them anytime soon." And I'll go, "They'll go, yeah, I don't know, he was lying. He was just feeding you, cock and ball." And so I think we just collaborate in different ways. I think, females have got this ability to be more vulnerable, far more authentic, but equally understand and recognize where there isn't that authenticity in a particular individual. And so create a collaborative environment that's more genuine and has got greater integrity. Men kind of understand and collaborate in different ways, but on a different level. Just my pennyworth.
I love your pennyworth. That's £50 worth right there. I absolutely love that.
I'll send the invoice.
Thank you very much. And I get what you're saying, but I'm not sure I agree totally. I can read a room. I know exactly what you mean. I go in there and I can feel the energy, and you can who's causing this bad vibe, and you can spot the person a mile off, or you can spot the person that's not authentic. But I do think there are guys out there that can do that as well. And I think maybe it's not been exposed enough because they don't realise that they can do it. I don't know. This isn't unknown to me, so it's a really good insight that you've just raised. Women being the superior sex, obviously we'd like to think so, but again, we need each other. And I think to have a mix of both in a room, to have diversity, to have all talents, all abilities in a collaboration makes it rock and roll. So to have a collaboration just of women, I'd be like, have a collaboration just of men, but put the mix together and it's magic. And I've been in a collaboration where it was me and 12 other guys. That was interesting. Because one of the things I found that's really interesting is that none of them were ready to get into action. They were all waiting for somebody else to start the ball rolling. And in the end, we created a product that was phenomenal, but nobody was prepared to market it. Nobody was prepared to roll their sleeves up and get on. And it actually ended up collapsing. And it was really bizarre. It was like the potential at the beginning of the collaboration was like, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. Because the people in the room were so clever. And it failed because nobody wanted to do the work. And even if one person had done the work, it wouldn't have been enough. We needed a few. And it was just, oh no, I can't, I'm too busy. I'm too important to do that. That was the kind of view. So it's really interesting how I think if the mix had been more even, 60-40, is this my impression that women are more likely to roll their sleeves up and get on with it and do the need, what needs to be done? That's a very sexist comment, and I put my hand up to that. But I'm loath to say that we're the superior sex. My mother used to think so. That's what I've been brought up on. That men need women; they're useless without us. But I don't necessarily agree with that. But you've just said, Tim, women communicate more openly, and again, that might be currently true because historically that's what's happened. But whether that is necessarily true now, and obviously we've got the ability to learn. So I know many men that communicate maybe too openly. It's like, too much information, stop talking now. It's really interesting how I think we've all got the ability to adapt what we need for a situation, but maybe there's more teaching that's needed in order to for men to adopt more feminine traits, what's historically feminine traits, and women to adopt historically what more masculine traits, or have the ability to dip in when it is needed along the way and adapt along the way. Brilliant contribution, Tim. There's so much there, so much gold dust. Absolutely fantastic. Thank you. I might come back to you in a little while. I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to talk to everybody. Before we do, Gina, could you reset the room for me, my love?
Certainly. So, welcome to Clubhouse and to our conversation today. We're talking about, are men better at collaboration? it would be really great if you could press the little plus button, which is at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, and invite everybody else to enjoy this conversation too. If you'd like to speak, please put your hand up and we can invite you to speak on the stage. And thank you very much for being part of our conversation this morning. Thanks, Jill.
Thanks, Jean. That's fantastic. So I welcome to the stage Ross. Lovely to have you with us, Ross. Thank you for coming up. What are your views on this? Are you better at collaborating than any women that you know?
Hi, good morning, everybody. I don't think I can think off the top of my head one thing that I'm better at than most women, to be honest. I would have to premise my opinion, and that is exactly what it is. This is not based on an academic report that I've read, or a journal, or one specific book. It's really just based on my experience, which, of course, that's what everybody's opinion is. It's based on their own experience. My experience is that I left school and joined the military. I joined the infantry as an 18-year-old. So, purely male-dominated environment. Other than office-based staff or female officers based in HQ as such, but at that point in time, women weren't allowed to join the infantry. So it was purely male-dominated. So that was where I had most of my bosses and collaboration and communication. Left the army 2005, 2006, and I've had a few female bosses and a lot of female peers, and in my opinion, women are, this is a broad sweeping statement, but women are pretty much superior in every department. Workloads, organisation, planning, communication, getting it done, being nice to people, being a good team player, all the things that you would want in somebody that was either a leader or a peer. Pretty much female. Every time I think of a good boss, I think of a woman that has been my boss. Every time that I think of somebody that I would like to bring onto a team, generally it's a female. I find women are much easier to deal with. Again, general, broad, sweeping statements, I know. But pretty much most of my experiences working with women or for women have been positive. And role models growing up, my grandmothers, not particularly my mother, but that's another story, but grandmothers, and certainly people that were influential in my life, pretty much female. So that's my opinion, based on nothing factual, just based on experience.
Wow. That's wonderful. I mean, it's a lovely thing to hear, and I think a lot of people will have experienced that, and I am assuming other people will have experienced the opposite as well. It's interesting how you talk about your male-dominated environment in the army. You missed earlier Dr. Lizzie Berntal. She was talking, and she's been in the army as well.
I know Lizzie well.
You do?
Yeah, I follow a lot of Lizzie's stuff.
Oh, scary!
You're being stalked. But yeah, and I would imagine she would be one of those people that you could look at and go, well, she'd be great in a team. She'd be great leading the team, in the team, part of the team. But collaboration is like, no matter how many people there are in it, 3, 5, 25, it's about coming to the space as equals rather than having somebody in charge and telling you what to do, which is more cooperation. You know, I need you to do this, you do this for me, and then I'll do that for you, is a slightly different beast to collaboration, where you're kind of getting the best out of each other in order to create a wonderful project. But I just love the fact that you've had such a positive experience with women. And you said at the beginning, women are superior in every department. And I think a lot of people are kind of coming around to that, but I don't necessarily agree. I think we're all individuals and we can all muck up big time and we can all be horrible at times.
But that's what I mean though, Jill. Like, I'm not saying that all of the women that I've ever worked with, none of them have ever made a mistake or had a bad day or, shouted or... Like, I'm not saying that females that I've worked with are incapable of that, but what I do find is that where a mistake has been made, generally, they'll hold their hand up. Whereas a lot of guys that I've worked with will start pointing fingers, or they will be, myself included, reluctant to apologise, stubborn. West coast of Scotland men in particular are pretty bad at discussing their feelings or issues. It's a huge problem, and I actually think, this is a weird opinion, but I actually think I have always felt like that from a young age, and I can actually pinpoint two things that happened in my life, very small, insignificant things that I think probably formed my opinion. But my dad was certainly a guy that was into manners. They were instilled in us from a very young age that, and it wasn't just holding a door open or saying please and thank you or whatever. It was that people were equal, that my mother was equal to my father, my grandmother was equal to my grandfather, and that's just the way that we were brought up. But I actually think that this is a bit of a bandwagon that people jump on, and that being able to see that it's not authentic, that I see these posts from guys on LinkedIn supporting women, and you can just read through it and you think, that's bullshit. You don't feel like that. That's a LinkedIn post. That is what that is. That is a, look at me, I'm an amazing 21st century guy, and I think women are great, and I support them, and I employ them. And you can just tell straight away, you can smell it, it's just not authentic. And I actually think that stops guys from kind of communicating how good some of the females that work with them or for them or they work for, how good they are, because I just feel like it's a bit of a bandwagon at the moment that people are jumping on because it's the cool thing, and I think that probably holds it back slightly.
That is a good point, Ross. I think there isn't this element of them and us, and I think the world that we're in at the moment is quite divisive. And it's like, are you with me or are you against me? Do you vote Trump or do you vote Biden? It's all very black and white, and are you for the Black Lives Matter movement or you're not? And if somebody's like, well, actually, then they're like vilified. You have to, the universities, when they won't let speakers come to speak about their opinions or, because it doesn't quite fit with the ethos of the university, people are not being given this opportunity to form their own opinion. And as you say, a bandwagon, people are jumping on this bandwagon of it's them and us. And I think the time has come for us to realise that we're all human beings. Let's all do it together. Let's help each other, support each other. And I don't know if you heard me at the beginning, but this is part of what Collaboration Global is about. It's like, come together, irrespective of your shape, your size, your gender, your sexual orientation, blah, 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 anything. We don't care. You're a human being first. And we want to help you, and we want you, with your genius, to help us. And it's all of the other stuff can go away. But having the ability to be authentic, be vulnerable, be courageous, be adventurous, and live your best life, but living it in the support and help of others. And it doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. I think it sounds like you've had an amazing role models, male or female, but you've had these amazing role models to help you. And as you say, even geographically, you're acknowledging that where you come from, men find it hard to talk about their feelings. And I think over the last probably couple of years, because of the pandemic, people are now sharing, you've got to be aware of talking to someone if you are struggling, because of poor mental health will have so many knock-on effects in your life later. There have been so many documentaries and so many drama series where people having a breakdown and not coping with their emotions because they're keeping everything to themselves. So I think women do normally talk, but they have access to other women to talk to, and that has been the way. Men go off to work, they do the job, they come back, women chat over the garden fence. Again, sweeping statement. I know this is a ridiculously sweeping statement, but this is how society has kind of gone along, and that's how these stereotypes have been formed. And I think it is now time to start going, look, it isn't like that anymore, and anyone can do anything, and we can all talk about our feelings. We should all talk about our feelings, and just not worry about, as you say, jumping on the bandwagon. It's a really good expression. People do it because it's going to tick a box and it's going to make them more money. And the minute we start to learn that we don't chase the dollar, and that, you know, finding purpose in life will give us more happiness, then we can embrace the fact that, hey, you're a guy, I'm a girl, and I value the differences that you bring to the table. And your differences might be sensitivity. It might be all the feminine skills, and mine might be all the masculine skills. But, you know, let's not label it. Let's just say you're a very sensitive, caring, kind, sharing person, and I'm very direct and problem-solving, and I get out there and get stuff done, and I want to be a leader. It doesn't matter whether it's feminine or masculine. It's let's get shit done. Let's get it sorted. And it's
funny the adjectives that you use to describe the typical male and the typical female. It's really interesting that guys are typically synonymous with getting it done and going out there and taking lead and taking charge, and females are good at communication. I always think that I was on, weirdly, we're coming into the Euros tonight. England versus Scotland will be the first football match I've watched in a long, long, long time. But in 1998, which is the last time that Scotland qualified for a major tournament, was my first ever boys' holiday. We went to Spain and we watched the Euros, and I remember a female pilot, and I walked on, and it was the first time I'd ever been on a flight, and one of the guys kind of made a comment walking past. We were 17 or 18, and said, "Oh, a female pilot." And I was sort of walking past at the time, and the pilot said, "Never had a female pilot before." And I said, "I've never been on a plane before. This is my first time ever being on a plane." And she said to me, and I'll never forget it, I spent 2 weeks in Spain reflecting on what she said to me at 18. And she said, "Well, I'm the first female pilot that your friends have seen, so you can imagine how difficult it was for me to get here. So imagine how good I am." That's what she said to me. And I always thought, wow, that's true. And that's how I look at things. That's kind of shaped and framed my perspective of, it was always more difficult for a female to come into a male-dominated environment. And pretty much every environment was male-dominated, other than the things that the men didn't want to do. So, I mean, imagine you're going to be really closely looked at. Everything's going to be through a magnifying glass. Everything's looked at in great detail because it's a female. And so you have to be better than your counterparts just to get on the same level. So I'm always delighted when I have a female pilot, which is weird. But I always think that you have to be that 10% better than everybody else around you that's male just because you're female. So that always gives me confidence.
Wow. That's thank you, Ross. Do you know what? You have just brought back a very strong memory from my mum, because she used to say, so I've got a sister, so, you know, she would say to me and my sister, to achieve half as much success as a man, you have to be twice as good. And she said, fortunately for us, that's not difficult. And that's what we grew up with. And we knew that if we wanted to get what the guys had got, we had to work twice as hard, be twice as good to get kind of halfway there. And it is true. And this is what we've been up against. And you forget. You get to a certain stage and you get to certain success in your life and you forget how hard you had to work at the beginning. to get there. So I'm hoping that the future generations, it's a more level playing field. But yeah, thank you. And I some of my daughter's friends are female pilots, and one of their friends is a male pilot, and I'm like, well, I'd much rather have the girls fly me than him because he's crazy. It's interesting. Thank you for that. I love it. Absolutely brilliant. What an insight. And it's a taste of reality of what's out there at the moment. And I think around the world, it changes depending on how religious the country is, how advanced the country is, how superpower the country is. You know, just because you're a superpower doesn't mean to say you've got it all together. There's a lot of machismo in the States, isn't there? But again, sweeping statements. Let's not go there. David, have you managed to park your children in time? And have you got time to talk?
Yep.
Brilliant. What are your thoughts?
It's interesting to hear what the guys have said. I agree with the comments on Facebook that there's far too many people who jump on the bandwagon about supporting different demographics of the community, and you just know damn well that they're doing it as a political statement as opposed to something they do. I obviously work in financial services, so it's pretty obvious who does what and what the attitudes are. I don't think men and women are technically equal in any way, shape or form, and I don't think they need to be. I think the key point is that we all bring different things to the table. It's not about equality. I think it's about people being given the right to achieve what they want to do. And everybody should be equal in that scenario, but we're not all the same. We all bring different things to the table. I disagree with what you said earlier on about everybody's equal in a collaboration, because I don't think they are. I think we bring different things. I think they're equal in the sense that it's not an employee-employer relationship necessarily, definitely. But I think that the benefit in what we bring together as a team of people in diversity and difference, and difference in every sense of the word, that is where the strength lies. That's why teams are stronger than individuals. A diverse team or group of people in forms of colour, sexual orientation, where they're from, cultural, will always be stronger and more open-minded, so long as everybody is given the opportunity to put their point forward. My experience of are men or women better in collaboration, I would always say that coming to the table and approach, women are definitely better because they tend to be more authentic, they tend to be more empathic, more intuitive generally, tend to be less ego-driven. I mean, if you get a bunch of boys in a bar, it tends to be a chest-beating exercise for a period of time. And I think historically women have had to compete. So if you look at financial services, some of the women in financial services are absolutely amazing. I mean, they're so much better than the guys. It's ridiculous. However, some of them are also on a power trip to the point of stupidity, and they've almost become a caricature of the job role that they were doing, because they had to be over and above and almost kind of put a bigger act on to basically beat the guys at that. Sorry for me. So I think it's an interesting question. I think generally women are better coming into a collaborative environment because they just are. I don't think it's necessarily about feminine traits or masculine traits. I think women generally bring less ego to the table and will generally make decisions to be in or out a lot faster than guys will. I don't know, are guys more herd animals? I don't know. But yeah, we are different. We always will be different. We have to be different. That's the kind of nature of human beings, isn't it? I think it's a huge strength that we're all different, and I don't think it needs to. A true collaboration is not a competition. It's not and I'm better than you. It's I bring these skills, you bring those skills. It fits together like Lego and it works. And I think that's hugely important. I think a lot of the comments about collaboration, etc., on LinkedIn, unless people have actually been in truly diverse teams, so the military is obviously one of the most diverse teams, arguably, I don't think they actually really understand what a true collaboration is. I mean, certainly the majority of the firms that we come across on a regular basis just haven't got a clue what collaboration is. They think it's you give us this and we'll do that. Thank you very much. No, it's not. It's a two-way thing. It's very much a kind of a mutually beneficial symbiotic relationship where, it works. So, yeah, I don't think it's necessarily needs to be a question of, who's best. I think it needs to be a question of probably who brings the best approach to the table, and on that basis, without question, women, I would suggest.
Well, thank you, David. That's fascinating because, ironically, the women had the conversation at the beginning of this hour and were saying that everyone's individual, the traits of feminine and masculine can be, men can have feminine traits and women can have masculine traits, and yet every guy that's spoken has said women definitely better, superior. And it's interesting how they are so emphatic about the traits that women bring to the table make them superior to men. I would disagree with that. I think every individual, as you say, in a collaboration, every individual brings special things, and that's why they're equal. They're valued equally, even if they're only bringing a trait of listening, which doesn't seem to be very proactive. Actually, it's very powerful to be able to listen and hear and understand what people are saying. This is a really big conversation. You brought up so many points. We need another 3 hours, but I've just spotted that Lawrence is in the room. So I'd love to hear what you think, Lawrence, because you must have massive experience of collaboration with men and or women. What are your thoughts around this topic?
An interesting subject, isn't it? Let's take it away that I'm in I'm doing a deal. I do deals. So deals are down to trust. Who would I trust? Would I trust a woman over a man or a man over a woman? I think it's immaterial. We're all equal on the world stage. I think women listen more. They're more emotional. They pick up things more than men. Men have other problems, and trust comes down to it. Would you trust a woman over a man or a man over a woman? Well, we could say that it depends on the character of the person, doesn't it? Are women more narcissistic than men, or are men more narcissistic than women? What is essentially the deal breaker in something like this, Jill?
Well, I think there are statistics, actually, Lawrence, that say there are more male narcissists than women. I read recently, although I don't have the paper to verify that on this stage at the moment, but that's what I read really about 2 days ago. But you bring up the brilliant point, trust, and it's who you trust, and it doesn't matter whether they're wearing a trousers or a skirt. It doesn't matter whether they are male or female. I mean, if you read Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, I'm from Mars 100%, and my husband is from Venus, so it's what works and what goes together. And I think everyone, in conclusion, because we're coming up to our end of our hour, in conclusion, I think you have to speak as you find, and I think we need all of the traits of the genders in a collaboration. And if they are weighted more in favour of the masculine traits, then the collaboration isn't going to be as effective. And if they are weighted in for feminine traits, I don't think the collaboration is going to be as effective. Now, whether it's women that take on the masculine traits or men that take on the feminine traits, I think we have to have a jolly good mix and value each other's contribution. and acknowledge each other's contribution. So I would like to take this chance now, it's 9 o'clock, to acknowledge everybody that's been in the room. It's been a fascinating conversation. We could have gone on for hours on this one. Poor Francis is going to be sad that he missed it, but he was away working to helping somebody with their cybersecurity. If you're interested, he has a club at 1 o'clock. I'm hoping he'll be there, and I will be there as well. If you fancy coming to talk about cybersecurity, just check, search for me or Francis West. But thank you for coming today. It's been amazing. Do we believe that men are better at collaborating than women? I think the answer is it depends. But basically, you have to trust someone to collaborate with them, and you speak as you find. We need a good mix of all of the wonderful feminine and masculine traits that there are in the world. And I'd like to thank you, Tim and Ross and Lawrence, for all your contributions. And for Gina, Lizzie, Selena and David for being part of this and being part of the Collaboration Global community. If anybody would like to see us, meet us face-to-face, we have a meeting at the end of the month. Check it out on collaborationglobal.org or go to Eventbrite and look for Collaboration Global, and you can just come and see us and continue this kind of conversation on a Zoom call. Thank you so much, guys. Have a fabulous weekend. I look forward to seeing you again next week. Same time, same place. Bye.
Bye.